Hello friend. I want to tell you about the Mercedes-Benz G-Class W463. In this text, we will look at the W463 model produced since 2001, because it is definitely more civilized than the earlier versions. It is worth emphasizing that almost all opinions prevailing in the off-road environment about the G-Class concern the older versions, or the W461 model. Gelände is an off-road utility vehicle, regardless of the version we are dealing with. This affects certain aspects that technically simply could not be changed. The body has many flat surfaces. The windows are also flat, including the front window. It has protruding door handles, external door hinges, roof gutters, bumpers mounted separately from the body, and a spare wheel placed on the rear doors. The features listed here affect practicality, although the assessment depends on individual needs or preferences. What will be an advantage for some may be a big disadvantage for others. The interior of the G-Class, regardless of year, also has several characteristic features, including being narrower than in other off-road vehicles. For a car measuring over 180 centimeters, the front feels narrow. The back is better, although it is difficult to talk about transporting 3 adults in comfort. There is plenty of legroom, but the width will be comfortable for 3 children at most. The driving position is also typical for off-road utility vehicles, and not everyone will find it as comfortable as in competing cars such as the Mitsubishi Pajero or Toyota Land Cruiser, which are made more like SUVs. The Mercedes G-Class is not as comfortable as other off-road vehicles, although it is more comfortable than the most classic off-road vehicles, such as the Land Rover Defender or Jeep Wrangler. However, it is more similar to them than to cars built in the SUV concept, such as the aforementioned Pajero or Land Cruiser, as well as the Nissan Patrol or Land Rover Discovery. Nevertheless, it is a car for 4 people, with a large, adjustable boot. The car drives quite confidently for a construction based on rigid axles and a frame, and even quite safely, because it has an ABS system, and also ESP in younger models. From an off-road perspective, it is an above-average capable car, although heavy. In this respect, it is very similar to the modern Ineos Grenadier. Perfect for long trips, not too big, but capacious enough, and due to its utilitarian nature, it is easy to implement off-road accessories in it. The classic design of the Mercedes G differs from other typical off-road vehicles primarily in its frame made using box technology, i.e. closed profiles, so-called DEF frame. In practice, this means not only greater structural rigidity, but also much better protection against corrosion. The consequence of this is the high weight of the vehicle, but good anti-corrosion protection is the greatest value in such a car and affects the high price of these cars. The W463 has permanent 4-wheel drive, meaning 3 differentials, but equipped with 3 locks. This means that the drive will work well in all conditions, on and off-road. The vehicle's suspension is based on 2 rigid drive axles sprung by a set of shock absorbers and springs. This translates into quite high travel comfort, but is burdened with rocking. The steering gear with hydraulic power steering is not very precise. Mercedes-Benz G-Class W463 engines. The range of engines for an off-road vehicle is very rich in the period 2001 to 2018, but the market has changed quite a lot since 2012. While until 2012 customers were happy to choose petrol and diesel engines, since the G-Class has become more synonymous with luxury than an off-road vehicle, petrol engines have gained market advantage, and the largest V8s at that. All diesel engines were equipped with common rail injection, while the petrol engines had indirect injection, except for the M157 and M176 units. All engine variants are combined with automatic transmissions. Initially, these were 5-speed, then 7-speed, and finally 9-speed. These are Mercedes' own designs. Which engine to choose? It all depends on your preferences and how you use your car. If you plan to drive it a lot, travel off-road, diesel is the best choice. Virtually any, although the weakest version of the C270 CDI is considered the best. It is a 5-cylinder inline unit with a power of just 156 HP. However, this applies to the oldest cars, so the wear of such an engine, mainly accessories, can be significant. The more powerful V6 variants provide significantly better performance, higher work culture, but also much higher service requirements. Breakdowns, on the other hand, are associated with expensive repairs, although in the case of the G-Class we are talking about wealthy people anyway. A well-maintained diesel will work well both in everyday use, fuel consumption of approximately 12 L 100 kilometers, and on long trips, including off-road ones. The same cannot be said about the most powerful, but also the most fuel-hungry G400 CDI. The V8 diesel was rather a proposition for people who care about the prestige of owning a V8, but also a reasonable range. The unit is considered not very successful, because it struggles with overheating, damage to turbines and injectors, and repairs are above average in any case. This is the only version of the G-Class that is simply not worth buying. Among the petrol engines, the rare one is the M112 engine with a V6 design, G320, which has poor performance compared to younger diesels, and fuel consumption is very high, approximately 18 L 100 kilometers, not much lower than V8. Of course, it is not that the G-Class doesn't drive with this engine, but the ratio of performance to fuel consumption is not very favorable, similar to G270 CDI. Another thing is that in the entire range, this is the least problematic engine, and at the same time exceptionally durable and the cheapest to maintain, if we equip it with an autogas installation. The remaining petrol units are V8. The G500 versions with the M113 engine are highly praised, as they are very durable and, in terms of performance, are a better option than the G320. Of course, in the event of a more serious failure, repairs are more expensive, but the engine itself is worth it. The same cannot be said of the 5.5-liter M273 unit used in the G500 since 2007. It struggled with an emergency timing drive, chain, and seizure, although such problems are not common in the G-Class. This is one of the few versions of this car that can be considered quite risky. In 2015, this unit was replaced by a much smaller 4-liter unit, which Mercedes uses to this day, and this is an engine designed not by Mercedes itself, but by AMG. The M176 is still a relatively new design, equipped with 2 turbochargers and direct fuel injection, but so far it has no bad reviews. The AMG versions, especially the later ones, from 2012, are slightly different cars than the standard G models. With a stiffer suspension, road tires, an exhaust pipe routed under the sill and rather averagely suited to off-road driving, although this can be quickly changed with accessory solutions. Unlike other similar cars, such as the Jeep Grand Cherokee SRT, we still have a reduction gear and differential locks. Repair and maintenance costs are of course higher than in the case of, for example, the G500 version, although the G55 AMG variant has an engine from the M113 family, differing in minor details from the M112 in the G500. Since 2004, it has been equipped with a compressor supercharger. It was installed until 2012 and is one of the most tempting morsels on the market, because the engine itself is characterized by great durability, and the performance does not differ from the later G63 AMG. The G55 class can be used normally on a daily basis, and even the car's configuration is not as road as the later G63. The G63 AMG model after 2015 used a V8 biturbo engine with the designation M157, but the block comes from the not entirely successful M273, although seizure problems rarely occur. Nevertheless, buying such a car seems risky. We can also mention the G63 version with the 12-cylinder M137 unit, but it is no longer a car for driving, only a collector's car. Due to numerous faults and very high repair costs, this is even a good thing. Less unique is the late G65 AMG model, although still very rare, with a more successful V12 engine marked M279. It was produced from 2012 to 2018. Mercedes-Benz G-Class W463 What breaks? Although the frame is very resistant to corrosion, like every off-roader on the market, the G-Class also struggles with rust. Mainly on the body, which is not a big problem for such cars, although it looks very bad in the luxury version. Due to the body design, 1970s, water can get into the interior. It's not just the bodywork that rusts, but also the door hinges. In fact, every time you service your car, you should take a good look at the body and chassis for corrosion and combat it right away, because after a few years you'll have to do the bodywork, if you care about aesthetics. If you look under the car, you'll probably see a lot of corrosion on the frame, but it's superficial. It's not as bad as in other off-roaders that don't have closed frame profiles. However, when attaching suspension elements, it's worth protecting the frame, because they're not as strong as the frame itself. A typical problem for G-Class users is the windscreen cracking from stones thrown from under the wheels of other cars. Due to its small inclination and simple shape, it is not very resistant to such events, so it is good to have appropriate insurance. It is also worth knowing about this before buying a used model, because a windscreen that does not match the others is usually not the result of a post-accident history. Another problem with every off-road vehicle, including the G-Class, is the falling hinges of the rear doors with the spare wheel. The more off-road driving, the more likely this is. It is also worth remembering to open the hatch on slopes or in strong winds. It is easy to not only damage the hinges, but also hurt someone. Unlike the older G-Classes, cars from 2001 and especially from 2012 have much more equipment, including electrical systems. Failures of individual equipment elements, as well as lighting, occur much more frequently. These are usually mechanical or corrosion-related damages. Sometimes it is necessary to replace the controller responsible for a certain area of the vehicle's equipment. Among the minor but costly faults, we can mention leaks. This most often concerns V6 diesel engines, but also the air conditioning system and power steering. The Mercedes G's huge advantage is its drive system, which from the gearbox to the axles is one of the most durable among off-road vehicles. Properly serviced gearboxes, reduction gears and axles last almost forever. Unfortunately, in practice, these mechanisms are rarely serviced, which can be associated with serious expenses after buying an older car with high mileage. However, durability must be separated from strength. In a normally used Mercedes G, these mechanisms are very durable, but not necessarily when tortured off-road. With large wheels and off-road tires, they are not as resistant to overloads as the mechanisms in, for example, a Nissan Patrol. In addition, the front axle, treated harshly off-road, tends to bend. Less durable are the spring-damping suspension elements, which, due to the vehicle's weight, must be replaced quite often, and in cars used for expeditions it is best to go for accessory solutions with greater durability. The steering gear has quite low tightness, although its durability is quite good. To sum up, the Gelände is not as armored as many people think when we talk about the W463 model from the 2001 model year. It is much heavier than the previous ones, more advanced in terms of electronics and requires servicing. Of course, it is still a very durable car, but only if you treat it the way G-Classes are usually treated. Don't take the durability test series from Whistle and Diesel, where the host shows how much the G-Class can withstand, too seriously. It doesn't directly relate to reality, because it doesn't show the actual damage and repairs needed to get the car back to a condition you'd actually want to drive. The G-Class is a very durable car, assuming it is used as an SUV with occasional off-road trips. Its indestructibility is widely exaggerated and mainly applies to the W461. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know any problems with this car that I didn't mention, be sure to write about them in the comments.